Welcome back to RFL's continuing extended coverage of the trial of Donald J. Trump as we await for the Senate to regavel into session so senators can continue asking questions of both the House managers who are prosecuting President Trump as well as President Trump's legal team who are defending him from those charges. This is the first of 2 days. It's an 8-hour day, which we expect to wrap up around 9 o'clock, which is around the time we expect our coverage to wrap up. We have another day of this coming tomorrow. I'm joined on set by Stan Twardy, who is a former federal prosecutor, who is joining us for legal analysis. And I'm going to ask for that analysis in just a second because an issue came up in some back and forth today related to the president's activities and a possible quid pro quo that might have benefited his election possibilities this year. And we want to hear first from Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard law professor emeritus, who is defending Donald Trump and defended him on that point earlier today.
If a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
There's that Latin phrase again, and that point was rebutted a short time thereafter by Adam Schiff.
If the president's real motive in depriving a state of disaster relief is because that governor won't get his attorney general to investigate the president's political rival, are we ready to say that the president can sacrifice the interests of the people of that state, or in the case of Medvedev, the people of our country, because all quid pro quos are fine, it's carte blanche? Is that really what we're prepared to say with respect to this president's conduct or the next? Because if we are, then the next president of the United States can ask for an investigation of you. They can ask for help in their next election from any foreign power. And the argument will be made, nope, Donald Trump was acquitted for doing exactly the same thing, therefore it must not be impeachable. Now, bear in mind that efforts to cheat an election are always going to be in proximity to an election. And if you say you can't hold a president accountable in an election year where they're trying to cheat in that election, then you are giving them carte blanche.
Stan, I want to get your take on the two arguments there. And my gut had me siding with Schiff, and I tried to apply it to a more domestic issue that, you know, the Gateway Tunnel under the Hudson that the New York area has sorely been lacking and needing, and lawmakers have been complaining about. If President Trump made a deal with the Attorney General of New York or New Jersey and said, like, we'll get you the money for that if you launch an investigation into Joe Biden, I got to think that's impeachable. I mean, I got to think that would be abuse of power. Or does Dershowitz have a more valid argument than I'm giving him credit for?
I think they actually have very good arguments on both sides.
Really?
Okay. I think that Congressman Schiff laid it out quite well. I think he laid out what's the common sense aspect of this. I think that Dershowitz gets into what is, again, I've mentioned this before, the quasi-judicial aspect of what's going on here. That it is not a true trial. It's not whether or not the president committed a crime. It's high crimes or misdemeanors. And the issue then is what is it that he did, and does this rise to a level of what is impeachable? Again, it's a quasi-political issue here. Mm-hmm. And part of this is, and I think that the question that Republicans and others have framed this well, is what he did enough, he meaning President Trump, enough to warrant the extraordinary remedy of undoing an election. And that, I think, is the hard part of all this. That it is, I don't think there's any doubt, it's what he did was reprehensible. I think that we've even heard a number of Republican senators, Republican congressmen who have not supported impeachment have said that. That is not the type of thing that a president should do. But is it the type of thing that, where do you draw the line? And we're seeing now in the federal system a thing called honest services fraud. You know, we'll have various representatives like Sheldon Silver in New York, who are accused of honest services fraud. That is, they're defrauded the public. You know, they use their position of trust to defraud the public. The courts are really reining that in.
They really
right
are.
Now. And so it's a little bit of, that's a little bit, I think, what Dershowitz was talking about is how broad is this going to be? Just because a elected representative uses his or her position of trust to accomplish something, where does the line fall as to when it becomes a fraud?
While you're on the clock, Counselor, another clip that I want to play and get your opinion on, because John Bolton has been in the news nonstop since last Friday, and he is the main person that Democrats want to get on the stand and want to hear from as a witness. And of course, all of these excerpts that have been coming from the manuscript of his book. But Jay Sekulow, who is a private attorney for President Trump and a member of the Trump legal defense team during this impeachment process, he got up and he said Bolton's manuscript wouldn't be admissible.
Responding to an unpublished manuscript that maybe some reporters have an idea of maybe what it says. That's what the evidence, if you want to call that evidence, I don't know what you'd call that. I'd call it inadmissible.
So, Stan, the reporting on Bolton's book wouldn't be admissible, but would the manuscript be admissible? And couldn't you solve that by just having John Bolton come?
The latter is the right way of doing it.
Okay.
You have Bolton testify. That we have, at least at the trial level, and again, impeachment's a quasi-judicial proceeding, that at the trial level, one has a right to confront one's opponents, someone who's accused them, okay, under the Constitution. Well, if you put a manuscript in, how do you cross-examine a manuscript? You don't do that. You have to cross-examine the individual. So, but I think the answer is Bolton should be called. If you want to do it, you need to call Bolton.
Let me hit you with one more, because we've heard these rumors. Pat Toomey was talking about trying to arrange a witness trade. Okay, we'll give you Bolton, but we get Joe Biden or we get Hunter Biden. You and I were talking before that Joe or Hunter Biden may not be germane to what's happening with Donald Trump. It certainly, whether Hunter Biden is crooked or not, that doesn't excuse or allow an abuse of power and an obstruction of Congress. So it really doesn't have that much to do with the charge that the president's being accused of. Could Democrats turn around, that's another John Roberts question, to John Roberts and say, Hunter Biden doesn't have any relevant testimony to give, why are we calling him?
So the answer is, at trial, again, before the courts, if John Roberts was sitting in his role solely as a judge, that the relevance does become an issue. There is precedence, though. I think if you go back to the Clinton trial, Chief Justice Rehnquist, when he was sitting there, deferred, sort of pundit on those issues of relevancy. And I think that again, it's not a pure trial. People try to paint this as a trial. It's not a pure trial. It's a quasi-political issue here. And so it really comes down to, really to the public, what is fair? I think that really, at the end of the day, and that's what our system of government is about here, our system of justice, is fair play and due process. And what is seen to be fair play? I think many would say, wait a second, whether or not Joe Biden got his position, I should say Hunter Biden got his position because of his father, is not relevant to what Donald Trump did in terms of withholding aid. On the other hand, maybe from a political point of view, it is relevant. And again, I think at trial, if John Roberts was sitting in his role as a judge in a courtroom, he would not allow the testimony of Hunter Biden.
The man with the knowledge is Stan Twardy. He's a former federal prosecutor, and he's our legal analyst for the night. So if you've got questions about the legal processes of this trial or about some of the decisions that have happened already, this seems like a pretty good opportunity to get some legal answers on this particular case, not yours, while we're on the air. And in that spirit, let's go to the phones. Robert is calling from Clinton, Maryland. We're having a big night in the Old Line State tonight. Robert, what's your take on what you've seen and whether there's a need for witnesses?
I believe we do need to see witnesses, and the first one needs to be Michael Atkinson, the IG. The second one needs to be Eric Ciaramella, and Mr. Schiff needs to be a witness. The first question needs to be asked to Mr. Schiff is, did you or any member of your staff have any prior contact with the whistleblower prior to him filing his complaint? And that alone will squash this whole case. Mr. Biden is relevant, his son is relevant, and as well as Mr. Hines. So I look forward to them calling witnesses, but Mr. Atkinson, he is the head of this. He started this, he's the IG, he changed the rules. That's the witness I want to see. His testimony that was done in Mr. Schiff's bunker has been held up and not been seen yet to this date. We must.
Robert, thank you very much. Robert, I will venture all the money in my pocket, pulled the lever for Donald Trump in 2016. And the names that he was spitting out are some of the names that we have been hearing in complaint relative to the whistleblower and the whistleblower's introduction. Stan, my question is, Robert clearly wants the whistleblower or information about the whistleblower process made a part of this impeachment trial. Is that, near as I can tell, everything that the whistleblower put in his report has now been testified to by other witnesses. Is that process even germane? Is it necessary here?
So two things is that either it's been attested to or not attested to by witnesses. Listen, there's something very sacred in our country. You know, this goes back to the Civil War about the whistleblower and protection of whistleblowers. And people are harmed at work. There are things that take place at work that are not right. And people will come forward with testimony about that, whether or not it's President Trump, whether or not it's at my law firm, that they will come forward and say, there's something wrong that's going on here. And there's a protection that's given to them. You know, it's not like you get to say, Stan Twardy did something wrong, therefore it's wrong. That there are processes then in place to investigate whether or not what Stan Twardy did was wrong. But there really is a sanctity to the protection of whistleblowers that it would really chill our system and people, frankly, it's usually ordinary, what I would call blue-collar workers who are the victims of things at work who become the whistleblowers. And for us to change that just because of this situation, that a whistleblower does not maintain or get the protection he or she has, I think would be a really tarnish our country and our system of government here and justice.
Our phone lines are filling up. Chandra, George, Vincent, I see you. We're going to get to you on the other side of a break. We're going to take a quick break. RNN's coverage of the trial of Donald Trump continues right after this.